Hey, welcome to my channel. It's Red Panda Girl. Today I'm going to be grinding while telling you some paranormal stories. So grab a cuppa or come grind with me. So let's begin. This story happened in 2008. The writer was a single parent at the time with 2 toddlers living in an apartment. The writer writes, I was putting them to bed one night and my son was adamant that he wears his favorite red race car pajamas. I happily obliged, helped him change into them, and tucked him into bed. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with a friend who had come over to chat and catch up. The way that my apartment was set up, you could see my kid's bedroom doorway from the kitchen table. My friend and I were talking for a while before we were suddenly interrupted by the sound of my son screaming, crying, shirking, and wearing his green pajamas with airplanes on them. Everything inside of me was screaming this was wrong. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end and a cold shiver shot down my spine. My friend and I wordlessly stared at each other for a second. We both knew that my son couldn't change his pajamas by himself yet. We looked back at the doorway and my son was gone. We ran to the bedroom and found him tucked in bed, still sleeping peacefully in his red race car pajamas. My friend asked me if I saw him standing there in his green airplane pajamas, and I confirmed that I had. My friend freaked out and left. I slept on my kids' bedroom floor that night to make sure nothing happened to them. My friend and I still talk about it to this day. It's one of the craziest things to ever happen to me. I moved out not long after that. My son, of course, doesn't remember any of it, but loves hearing the story. That was so freaky. I personally think it could have been a mimic or a doppelganger. Tell me your theories in the comments. Also, why did the friend leave? Like, girl, what happened to safety in numbers? And why would you leave a single mom, I'm presuming, alone after that? Sorry, that is no friend, scared or not. So this next story is quite upsetting, so I would like to add a TMW for suicide. And if you or anyone you know is suffering from suicidal thoughts, please reach out to the helplines in the description. So the writer writes, last year I was staying in a hotel with my mom. One of the nights as I was laying in bed, I noticed a human silhouette maybe 2 meters away from me. I figured it was just a shadow, so I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. I turned the light on and obviously it disappeared. But when I shut off the lights again, it came back. I tried to convince myself that it was just a shadow, but trust me when I say there was nothing in that room that could have made a shadow like that. I looked around the room several times. It also occurred to me that the shadow weren't there the previous nights, and nothing had been moved around. It looked just like a human silhouette. I never believed in ghosts, but right then and there I was terrified. I was too scared to look at it, so I turned around and eventually fell asleep. I told my mom about it the next morning, and she just shrugged it off. She said I was just imagining things. Fair enough. That shadow weren't there the next night. Or the next. A few days after we had gotten back home, my mom was doing something in the kitchen and I was just sitting there studying. Without turning around, my mom said, do you remember that shadow of a person you saw at the hotel? Or said, yeah. My mom just said I saw it too. My blood turned to friggin' ice. Mom didn't want to admit that she also saw it. I thought that she was sleeping because she didn't want to freak me out. I'm convinced that if ghosts exist, I saw one that night. My mom thinks it was the ghost of her best friend, who had committed suicide just a few days prior. Mom had spent hours earlier that evening writing her a long letter for some kind of closure. Maybe her best friend also wanted to say goodbye. That story broke my heart. I cannot comprehend how much heartache the mom must have felt. But also, it's bittersweet. Her best friend just wanted to say goodbye for one last time. I'm tearing up. I can't help but imagine. That was my best friend. And I was in the mom's shoes. That story is heartbreaking, and even though it was 9 years ago, I hope the writer and especially the mom are doing good now. Now moving on to the third story, this one is actually really cute and made me laugh. The writer writes, years ago my uncle told us about a woman who would call the police station just about every night, claiming that fairies or elves were breaking into her house and stealing her food. As is custom, every time she calls, they send a unit to check on her. My uncle gets it about 2 to 3 times per week. Every night, they stop by her house and reassure her that no one has broken in and calm her down. One night, when he gets to the house, she has poured powdered sugar all over the floor to record their tracks, and my uncle says he literally has to do a double take. All over the floor of her kitchen are these little tracks, tiny, like nothing he's seen before. His partner starts taking photos and trying to figure it out. A few other officers come in, as most of them had gotten the call to her house too and want to see it. 10 police officers, all completely baffled as to what these weird little prints are. Turns out a possum had babies and they were sneaking into her kitchen for warmth or food. The prints looked so foreign because most of the time baby possums are carried by their mother, not running around. 7 are rounded up and released in a less residential area. That story was so adorable, not just because of the baby possums, but also the old lady who thought she had fairies and elves. I know that must have been scary at the time, but I would just feel so magical and would tell everyone that I have fairies living in my house, but that's just me. They would also probably send me to a psych ward. Also, not sure if you noticed, but I removed the text off the screen for the last one because the audio keeps stopping and starting, and it's really annoying me, so I'm going to continue to do that for the next few stories. Just let me know in the comments what you think, your preference. Moving on to the 4th story, this one is basically about a tarot card reader. I have a friend that lived with me, her and her 18-year-old son, for a month and a half until the apartment they now live in was ready. She's from a long line of mountain witches on both sides and could genuinely become a medium if she wanted to. She very much doesn't, but she had a pack of tarot cards that she would read incessantly, as something between a self-soothing habit and a fidget. Sometimes she wouldn't even ask the cards a question, just start flipping through to see what cards she landed on when she had been there for a couple weeks. Things started getting spooky in the apartment. Noises that weren't normal, shapes out of the corner of your eye, cabinet doors open, you swore you closed, that sort of thing. I asked her to calm it with the cards and she agreed. But again, by that time it was more of a habit than anything and she didn't slow down at all. One evening we were sitting in the living room and watching TV when her son came in the room and did that thing guys do sometimes where they stand there and watch as well. After a few seconds I looked over to the doorway, but there was no one there. And then I played back what I saw and yeah, it didn't make sense. Her son was 18 at the time and is a big guy. This person I saw had short ginger hair, her son has long brunette hair, was middle-aged and was wearing something cream-colored and with a collar but with a weird texture. I couldn't tell from the brief look I saw, but the closest I could think of was a trench coat. Spooked, I told her what I had just seen and we both had a moment where we acknowledged that it had been creepy. I again asked her to cool it with the cards. She complied for a couple days and then was back at it. Not long after that, she and her son moved into her new apartment. All was well, except the spookies followed her. After she left, my apartment was suddenly quiet and I had 0 experiences I couldn't explain. Then, about a week after she moved in, she called me in a panic. She had woken in the middle of the night to see a man standing over her bed and watching her sleep. She had freaked out and turned on the light, except as soon as her lamp turned on, the figure disappeared. She started describing the figure as tall and lanky, and I had a thought, was he a middle-aged ginger man? I asked her, I don't know. I couldn't see his face, she replied. It was in shadow, but he was wearing yellow pajamas, the old-fashioned kind that buttoned up with a collar, and it had small little flowers printed on it. And I suddenly realized that that's what the weird texture was on the man I had seen weeks before. They were little flowers. It was the same man wearing the same outfit. I told her this, that it was the same man I had seen a few weeks before. He had followed her to her new apartment. She put the cards away after that. And the spooky stopped. Now the writer didn't stop there. She also added one of the scariest experiences her friend had with the cards, so let's go through that. Also just want to say a big shout out to Maisie and Daisy. After a really nasty breakup had left her in serious debt, my friend lost her house and had to move back in with her father. Her father is not a nice man. He believes that the world revolves around him, and that her and her son staying in his house entitles him to treat his own daughter like a maid there for his bidding. She was just going to wait it out until the apartment was ready until one day. They got into an argument over the fact that she didn't wash the dishes after cooking him dinner, and it ended with him threatening to slit her throat, hence staying with me in my apartment. So I've never seen anyone use the cards like she does. She asks a question and shuffles the deck until a card pops out. This is how she selects what card she's supposed to draw. Anyway, after spending hours on the phone with her father to formalize some plans to pick up some of her stuff that basically boil down to the fact that she'll never amount to anything because she doesn't have the right set of genitals and she should just come home now. And maybe he'll forgive her. You know, the standard stuff. She was ready to pop. So she gets the cards and asks them about the future for her father. The results were confusing. He would have a rough go of it, and his future would be dominated by a strong female presence. We would later find out that he had secretly been dating a woman online, a woman that he plans to maybe marry at some point, and this woman definitely has him wrapped around her finger. But we didn't know that at the time. But my friend was upset and not in the mood for riddles. So she did what she does sometimes when the cards aren't giving a straight answer. I just want to know. Yes or no, will my father face any sort of karma or consequences for what he's done to me and my son? One card, yes or no. She had barely shuffled it all when one card yeeted itself out of the deck to land, face down on the floor in front of us. Like something out of a movie, we bent over to look, and I swear to everything that is holy, I am not lying. The card laying there face up, pretty as if someone had placed it there, was justice. We both got goosebumps. She thanked the cards and put them away. Since then, her father has become a miserable wreck, as sorry as he can be for what he's done. He's facing loneliness, money problems, and all sorts of general day-to-day woes that she smoothed over for him when she lived there. The cards didn't lie. Wow, that was a lot to take in, but at least that monster got his karma in the end. Okay, this next story gave me chills, the writer wrote. Growing up, there were constant strange activities in my house. Electronics would turn off and on, and footsteps would be heard in empty rooms. A few times when I was home alone, I heard voices. The worst, creepiest was when I was a child and fixing dinner. I needed to get something from our upstairs hall pantry. I walked towards the stairs and froze. I don't know why, but I couldn't move. I was terrified. My dog came up to me, then looked towards the stairs and started growling and showing his teeth. He also pushed me back, so he was in front of me, snapping at whatever was on the stairs. It was only my father and I home. Mother and my brother were out, and we lived on the second floor. Their doors were locked, and no one could get in without us knowing, so whatever it wasn't human. My father came over to see why our dog was freaking out, and when I told him, he said I was being silly and went to the stairs. He got to the doorway and froze. He looked scared and told me to take the dog, go get my uncle from across the street, and stay outside until he said. I did as I was told. This was almost 30 years ago. I never knew what was there. They never told me. I never felt fear like that again in that house, though. Now, this story doesn't stop there. The writer replied to a commenter asking whether she had asked her, Dad or Uncle, what had happened. Here's what she said. I did. I asked him and my uncle both after I went back inside. They told me, kid, you don't want to know. Don't ever ask again. I'm pretty positive it wasn't an intruder because I hid with my dog in the backyard. No one went out the front or back. I'm in full view of the back door, and neighbors were in front, and I would have heard if anyone came out. After a bit, my father came outside looking for me and said it was okay to come back in. He and my uncle looked freaked out and told me to never ask again. I was very young when this happened, and given their reaction, I only asked the one time. My uncle passed while I was still a teen, and my father passed in my mid-20s. They passed, never telling any of us what it was. I asked my mother, and she knew something strange happened on that day, but my dad didn't tell her exactly what it was and what they did, and she never asked again either. I'm nearly 40. I half wish I knew what they saw and half grateful I never found out. That story is definitely creepy, but can be debunked, I think. Especially as a kid, your mind just jumps to the scariest conclusion, and the adults definitely didn't help in this situation. Personally, I don't think this one is paranormal. I think it may have just been something you wouldn't want a child to see. So this next story isn't so much paranormal, more a glitch in the Matrix kind of vibe. The writer writes, this is by far the most mind-bending WTF moment of my life. As a disclaimer, I'd like to add the following story is 100% true. It was a rainy Saturday morning in the spring of 1994. I was in my living room watching TV. My dad called me to the kitchen and asked if I wanted to take a ride out to the mall by the university. Being bored out of my head, I replied sure. We end up driving there, walked to the mall, and stumbled into a walk-in old-school-style mall pizza place. My dad asked if I want a slice. Being a teenage boy, obviously I did. This is where things get weird. We walk in, and upon entry, I notice it's significantly colder in there. There's a bluish tint to everything, noise is slightly muffled, and everyone is looking at us. I look up at my dad to get confirmation. He has a huge WTF look on his face, which told me everything I needed to know. We get 2 slices, sit down, and eat them pretty quickly. At one point, a guy sitting in the corner wearing a pork pie hat looks right at us and raises and lowers his eyebrows. Again, looked at my dad, and he was clearly creeped out. We finish our slices, toss the paper plates, and head out of there pretty fast. Almost instantly after walking out of there, everything went back to normal. Years later, I went back with a friend trying to find the pizza place, and an old janitor said there hasn't been a walk-in place here since the 70s. Adding to the WTF factor, recently I mentioned this to my dad, and we spoke about it for the first time in decades. He basically confirmed everything I said about it being really creepy and thinks we possibly experienced a time or dimension hop. Wherever we went, we weren't supposed to be there, was his quote. Now, that is one creepy experience, but at the same time, an amazing story to tell. Honestly, what a movie plot, though. Now, I found the next story actually in the replies of the last one, so here comes another glitch in the Matrix story time. Something strange happened to me too, but I'm not sure if it was a time shift. About a month ago, I went with my brother to grab dinner from a restaurant. Since it was crowded, we decided to eat in the nearest park. We hadn't planned to go there, but the neighborhood around the park felt really weird and gave off a strange, dark energy, like something was off. It didn't feel comfortable, and it didn't even feel like we were in the real world anymore. We ignored the feeling and stopped at a park with an old, strange design that didn't make sense by municipal standards. The park was surrounded by houses, and the front doors of the houses opened directly onto the park. The lights were dim and eerie, the benches were worn out, and the energy of the place was unsettling in a way I had never felt before. My brother and I had identical WTF looks on our faces. There was only one person there, this man who was talking to himself and rubbing his nose. I thought he might be wearing earbuds and talking to someone, or maybe he was just crazy. His clothes looked like they were from an older era, definitely not modern, and honestly, he didn't even feel like a real person. My brother was way more freaked out than I was. If he hadn't been scared, I might have stayed and eaten there despite the uneasy vibe. But then my brother said, "I don't feel comfortable. I want to leave. This place is weird." The sky was pitch black, the houses looked oddly old, and the man seemed like he was high. The man eventually left, and as my brother and I were sitting there analyzing the strange energy of the place, my brother suddenly said something that gave me chills. He said, "I feel like we're not in our time right now. I feel like we're in the past." That hit me hard because it was exactly what I was feeling. I told him, "That's exactly how I feel." He said, "Let's get out of here." Even the man isn't acting normal. This place feels dangerous, so we got up to leave. The man came back to the park, still talking to himself and rubbing his nose a lot. As we were walking away, a huge man entered the park right after the first man, and he walked normally like nothing was strange. As we were leaving, my brother looked back and saw the first man using a flashlight to search the area where we had been sitting. My brother later told me something that added to the eeriness. He said, "I don't think anyone lives in those houses. They look abandoned, even though the houses had lights outside. There were no sounds or signs of people, no cars or anything to suggest someone lived there." We got into the car quickly and drove out of the neighborhood. The moment we left, everything felt lighter, and it was like we were back in the real world again. What's even stranger is that my brother and I had the exact same feelings, thoughts, and instincts the whole time. I started wondering, what if the man sensed danger from us, or was planning something and called the big guy for backup? What if those houses were used for something shady? What if they weren't even real? That whole place felt like it existed in a different world. I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but there are so many strange things in the world. I feel like our feelings and instincts often come from something real, even if it doesn't make sense. Okay, so that was terrifying, but I absolutely agree with the last part. Always trust your gut instinct. If something feels off or doesn't look right, don't ignore that instinct because 9 times out of 10 you're correct. This has been my longest video ever, and it's taken me over 3 hours to edit because of the audio problems. And if you have made it this far, please like and subscribe and comment down below that you made it. Bye Red Panda Squad, see you next video.